Dear colleagues, dear friends, good morning and welcome to today's webinar, which is organized as a part of EU-funded project Tourism 4.0. My name is Bernard Zenzerovic. I am CEO of Croatian Hotel Association, which is one of the 9 partners involved in this project. Today's webinar is a part of educational scheme within a aforementioned project to share the latest knowledge and trends on topics such as sustainability, digitalization, digital transformation, and all other aspects which are relevant for our hospitality businesses. The topic of our webinar you can see on your screen. It's advancing environmental and social sustainability of tourism SMEs. Our lecturer today will be Ms. Neda Telišman Košuta, consultant with more than 30 years of experience in hospitality industry. The reason why we have decided to do a webinar on this topic is that we are all aware how sustainability is a hot topic in our industry and how high this issue is on agenda of our guests and clients. Also, considering that we are all from EU, we are also aware that this agenda is really high on at the agenda of European policy makers, and that regulation which also involves hospitality sector regarding to sustainability is quite literally booming, and probably both of these trends will not stop anytime soon. So the need to adapt, the need to change the way we do business into more sustainable way, it's here, and it's more urgent than ever. Before I give a word to our today lecturer, just a few technical informations from our side. So like you could see from the agenda, we have planned this webinar to last approximately in total for 50 minutes. After my brief introduction, Ms. Telišman Košuta will have a lecture about 35 to 40 minutes long. And after this part, we will have a Q&A session. We are in a webinar mode of Zoom, so I invite that you for Q&A session use the chat options, which I can see you are all familiar with since we have all these messages of welcomes and greetings already put into our chat box. Like you can hear from the note at the sound from the beginning of webinar, this session is being recorded. So much from my side for the introduction. Thank you one more for being with us, and I would like to now give word to our lecturer, Neda Telišman Košuta. Ms. Telišman, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, and hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar on advancing environmental and social sustainability of tourism SMEs. Thank you for this introduction, Bernard. And yes, I have worked in tourism development my entire professional life here in Croatia, and I think I can say that I have really witnessed firsthand the impacts and the costs of tourism, which make this topic of its social environment and environmental sustainability such an important and urgent one. Oh boy, this happens every time. Computer freezes. Let me just try to get it going. There we go.
Yeah, it's moving.
There we
it's
go.
Moving now.
It always freezes on the first slide. Okay, so I don't know how many of you actually had the opportunity, had the chance to watch the so-called Pill of Knowledge that came out on the same subject within the scope of this project, of course, in July. So in order to set the stage for this webinar, allow me to first briefly recap some of the truths about tourism that we discussed in that pill of knowledge. And then we will spend most of the 40 minutes actually looking at some of the solutions, at some of the best practices in this area of social and environmental sustainability. So, to paraphrase a title from a book that came out in the early 70s, so this is a subject with quite a bit of history. To paraphrase the title of this book, is tourism a blessing or a blight? I think a question that many of us ask ourselves very often. But actually this, you can say, is maybe a senseless question, especially here in large parts of the world, including here in the Mediterranean and in Croatia as well, where tourism is one of the economic mainstays of the country. And of course, it is considered a blessing. And we can certainly testify to that from the eagerly awaited recovery from COVID-19. So while at the same time, more and more research and more data is actually testifying to the costs of tourism, particularly costs that are borne by the natural and the social, by the natural environment and the social fabric of tourism destinations. Research is showing, for example, that tourism-generated crowds, traffic, noise, rowdy behavior, not to mention price increases and lack of housing, for example, for the local population, are becoming critical irritation factors for the local population across Europe. Local people and local lifestyles are being displaced by facilities and services for tourists. And research shows again that the locals feel a sense of place and place identity is being lost, and that many historic town centers are just becoming stages for tourists that are devoid of real community life. Tourism-driven building boom is really disfiguring the landscape, especially the coastal landscapes of our countries. Tourism is also a significant contributor to food waste. Now, data here vary, but World Wildlife Fund figures set it at around 1.6 billion tons of thrown away food every year. Hotels are among the highest water and energy consumers, using up to 5,000 liters of water per room per day. Incredible, isn't it? The travel industry also contributes significantly to global warming and being responsible for approximately 8% of world carbon emissions, most of that coming from transportation. Now, as you may have noticed, this summer's jubilant news of another record-breaking tourism season and of tourism coming back in full swing after COVID. These news have been intertwined with news of tourism curbing measures, and some of them really drastic curbing measures. For example, I don't know if you've picked up on Portugal's new More Housing law that was approved by Parliament this summer, and that basically is blocking the opening of accommodation under 10 rooms until 2030. And after that, it will make it much more difficult to open these small hostels or private apartments. With the same intent, my hometown here in the city of Zagreb also just increased taxes on tourism apartments to the legal maximum. I was just reading this morning that Venice is in fact going ahead with charging an entry ticket. I think it's going to be €5 to come into Venice from next summer, from 2024. The French government is to increase taxes on low-cost air travel and on highways, basically doing away with these 10 euro airfare tickets across Europe in order to invest in railroads. There are other examples. In Sardinia, in certain parts of the island, you have to make reservations for a beach spot. Portofino has imposed this summer a tourist code of conduct with really, really high, hundreds of euros, high fines for not obeying it. So this really is a time when we are rethinking tourism. This is a time of rethinking tourism. And it's triggered by the factors that are driving this change. The drivers of change are actually, of course, an undeniable global environmental crisis, a shift to, but also a shift to post-materialistic values, especially among the environmentally and socially conscious younger generations, the millennials and the Z generation. And finally, it is also driven by the political will. Finally, there is political will for change, as we've seen from the samples, from the examples I was just mentioning a second ago, but also that we're seeing on a macro level from the European Commission's European Green Deal, which aims to restructure Europe's economy in alignment with green industries in order to achieve climate neutral Europe by 2050. So we're seeing definitely an emphasis all around on a push towards a greener, smarter, and more inclusive tourism. Guest expectations are also changing, and as we can see from the evidence provided in the Booking.com Sustainable Travel Report from 2022, guest expectations are changing. Guests are definitely expecting more sustainable practices, and they're expecting the industry to take the lead in these sustainable practices. And this is probably a more immediate push to the industry to really start speeding things up and change and making necessary changes. There's also in this rethinking of tourism, there's also quite a lot of help. There are a lot of a myriad actually of national and international profit and non-profit organizations that are facilitating this transition for the tourism and the hospitality industry. And just to mention a few that you see here on the slide, of course, the UNWTO, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, but then there are others such as the Future of Tourism Coalition, or the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, GSTC, or the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and et cetera, et cetera. You will be seeing these organizations referenced throughout the remainder of the presentation, and I invite you to, if you haven't already, to really study what they have to offer, either through their websites or through their numerous publications. So now one of those organizations, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, actually provides a framework for guiding destinations and accommodations towards sustainability. They provide a series of criteria and indicators for destinations and accommodations, which are the minimum standard or the baseline for sustainable operations. So specifically, these GSTC criteria for hotels serve as a basic guideline for hotels of all sizes to become more sustainable. These criteria and indicators they're applicable throughout the world. They also serve as a basis for certification in sustainability for hotels, and the criteria are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals until 2020. These criteria for hotels are organized in 4 main themes, as you can see here on the slide. The first theme deals with effective sustainability management. which is about actually setting up a system within your property or within if you're maybe a larger chain, a hotel chain, but with setting up a system to track, to measure sustainability and to take action. The second theme or the second set of criteria deals with maximizing social and economic benefits of tourism. And this deals with how the hotel company supports the local community. The third area deals with enhancing cultural heritage, which again has to do with making sure that companies, but also their hotel companies, but also their guests are not adversely affecting the cultural heritage of a community. And finally, the final section deals with reducing negative impacts to the environment. And this is where issues of the hotel's impact on energy, on water consumption, on waste, on the property's carbon footprint are tackled. I've included here on the slide I've included here some of this is just a selection of criteria. It's actually much broader, and I invite you to consult the GSTC publications on this. Their website is indicated here below, where you can see the complete list of everything that they cover. Now, using this GSTC framework, I propose we now go on into the actually talking about best practices. And so based on this framework, through the remainder of the webinar, I propose we look at best practices for the hotel industry that are currently in place in relation to sustainability management system, in relation to environmentally preferable purchasing, waste management, water management, energy conservation, and greenhouse gas emissions. So that is, if you remembered all that, that is our agenda for the remainder of the session of the webinar. So looking at the sustainability management system. Now I've organized, let me just point out here also, you'll be seeing a series of tables like this one when we're talking about these best practices. And the way I've organized that, I've tried to list again a selection of best practices here in this part of the table, give you an overview of what these organizations or consultants or the industry is actually proposing that should be done, that are good practices in reaching sustainable operations. While on this end of the table, I've included some benchmarks that are available today to show you what is actually happening and what the industry is actually doing. Now, I don't have benchmarks available for every single one of these best practices, but you will get a sense, I think you'll get a good sense of what is actually happening in the industry today. Now, these benchmarks come from the Green Lodging Trends Report, which currently gathers data from some 27,000 facilities, hotel facilities worldwide, including hotels from large chains as well as small and medium operators. So according to GSTC, the sustainable management system or best practices for a sustainable management system are, first of all, producing a document or a report. You have to have a place, a document where your strategic goals in sustainability and your annual goals in sustainability are documented, where your measurements are reported, the analysis is reported, and your progress is tracked. So there has to be a report, there has to be a written document behind this effort. There's a large variation here in what companies actually produce. Some of the large chains, you can imagine, they produce very glossy, very extensive, very detailed documents. Others have maybe a section in their annual company report that deals with their ESG measures. So the extent varies, but most of the companies that I've looked at or that I know of that actually are involved with ESG practices do report it somewhere. There's also, if you're going to have a viable sustainability practice, you have to have a dedicated sustainability staff. This again varies greatly. This can vary from really departments in very large international chains, the Hyatts, the Marriotts of this world. They really have in their headquarters staffs, large staffs, departments devoted to ESG practices. It can vary from that to maybe having one person championing or being in charge of sustainability issues, or maybe just the GM, the hotel GM, along with everything else he or she does, is also championing sustainability. Again, that varies, but somebody has to be in charge. There has to be training available to the staff. This means staff in different hotel departments, of course, probably staff in food and beverage and in housekeeping are the ones that are really should be focused on regarding training in sustainability measures. There has to be a dedicated budget. There has to be a budget for sustainability if this is going to be a viable practice. And something that most companies are doing and that is considered very important is to keep track of, to have a feedback system in place of what your customers are saying, what they're expecting, and how they're reviewing your actions. Also, these organizations, these facilitating organizations, like the GSTC, they put great emphasis on third-party certification. And from what you can see in the Booking.com report on customer preferences, the customers are also saying that they value certification as a way of that certification is important for them as well as a means of cutting through all the greenwashing or all the noise, we can call it noise, regarding green promises that's out there today. But yet the industry is reluctant, as you can see from this low figure. Only 20% of hotels that are part of this benchmarking study actually are certified for sustainability by a third party. So much for setting up a system. So you need to document it, you need a budget, you need a staff, you need training, and you need to somehow prove it through a certificate. These are considered good practices. Let's move on to the next topic that I thought was of interest and of importance, environmentally preferable purchasing. Hotels are big buyers. They're big buyers of a wide variety of products, and good sustainable practices in their purchasing, among others, are considered to be giving priority to local suppliers. Of course, if these are available and if their quality is sufficient, is good enough. Since giving priority to local suppliers supports the local community, but it also has to do with cutting down on the carbon footprint coming from transporting goods for long distances. So giving priority to local suppliers is considered a very, very important best practice. Giving priority to fair trade suppliers, that also has to do with benefits for local communities. Then including products from organic sources. Now that having to do with reducing land pollution and health, of course. Giving priority to recycled materials and biodegradable substances. This having to do with reducing waste. And a good practice is also to collaborate with your suppliers to make sure that their sustainability practices are aligned with what you're trying to do. It doesn't make sense for you to be involved or trying to eliminate plastics, for example, from your hotel if your suppliers are shipping everything or providing everything wrapped up in plastic. So you really need to select those suppliers or to work with the existing ones to make sure that your sustainability practices are aligned. Most hotels nowadays are doing something regarding preferable purchasing. As you can see from these benchmarks, they are giving priority to fair trade, whether it's sourcing coffee from fair trade producers or range-free eggs. And a lot is obviously most hotels are using non-toxic, biodegradable cleaning materials. Cleaning materials are an area where a lot of attention is being paid. I want to share here with you an example of a success story or a best case example from a relatively small independent hotel here in Croatia, in northwest part of Croatia, which is not a touristic part of the country, Hotel Terme Sveti Martin, which is really one of the true champions, I would say, of sustainability here in Croatia. And they show what a small operation and an independent hotel can actually do. So they're sourcing, regarding this subject, they're sourcing 80% of their food and beverage from local farmers. And they also have a program in place where they buy from their own staff if they produce, if they have vineyards or orchards or they produce vegetables or have a vegetable garden, they buy produce from their own staff as well and use it in hotels' food and beverage offer. On to the next subject of waste management. Now, the hotel industry has a large waste footprint. It can be really significant, and particularly in relation to wasted food, as I've mentioned at the beginning. So the main focus is on minimizing solid waste. That's minimizing waste that is going to landfills, and the mantra here is reduce by separating, reusing, and recycling. And once again, let me just briefly mention this Hotel Terme Sveti Martin, who actually have set up they've set up a furniture refurbishment shop on premises where their staff part-time also work on repurposing old hotel furniture, finding new uses and new places for it instead of furniture being thrown away. But hotels seem to be, when we look at these benchmark figures, we can see that hotels are more agile in dealing with sustainability in regards to food waste than solid waste. And most, as you can see, some 85% of the properties benchmarked are doing something, are dealing with food waste, and they're implementing actions. And reducing food waste actually starts with measuring, and first of all, measuring and monitoring how much is being thrown away, and then applying measures in order to minimize that. And those measures can include, for example, better management of food stocks, so that you're really buying what you're going to be using. Another measure is reducing portions. You know, maybe those big plates are not such a good idea, or maybe the buffet line is not such a good idea. Maybe that is something passé, but portions need to be reduced because experience or measurements are showing that people just tend to pile up a lot of food when it's out there and available, and then a lot of it does get thrown away. Other measures that are being taken is actually teaching cooks and chefs to make use of all parts of a food item, finding uses for all parts of, let's say, a chicken, making soup stock from parts of the chicken that would previously get thrown away, or using even what they call ugly foods. A tomato that is not picture perfect is still a very tasty tomato. So let's not throw it away because it doesn't look so good. Also, other measures include reusing left food. There are initiatives to, reusing leftover foods. There are initiatives today to build menus, again, teach chefs to build menus around leftovers. And donating surplus food to the needy is, again, a noble and it really makes sense measures. So hotels can partner with organizations that can distribute leftover food to the needy or through different charities. When we talk about waste, of course, it's unavoidable to talk about plastic waste. We know that hotels are big producers of, or actually big consumers of plastics, especially all those single-use everythings, from single-use bathroom amenities to single-use sugars. And we also know that in the EU, we now have a ban on single-use plastic. So a lot of the straws, the stirrers, plastic cups have been done away with, which is not the case in most parts of the world. So still single-use plastics are a big issue for the hospitality industry, but we are seeing also hotels going beyond that, beyond just eliminating single-use plastics. And actually, for example, one good example is Maistra Hotels, which is a hotel group here in Croatia, and their plastic-free initiative, and turning actually one of their hotels, Hotel Adriatic in Rovinj, which is also their smallest hotel, but nevertheless, it's the first hotel to be plastic-free. So the company is really pushing towards plastic-free facilities. And replacing them, of course, with recycled or more ecologically accepted materials. Another big topic is water conservation. When we talk of sustainability, hotels are, of course, as I've mentioned before, big consumers of water. Just think of not just all the rooms with showers and bathtubs, but think of all the pools of all the wellness centers. And in addition, many destinations in the world are either located or are now, with climate change, beginning to experience severe water stress. So large parts of the Mediterranean as well, Spain, Greece, Southern Mediterranean are water-stressed areas. Which makes water conservation a huge issue. And even if water is cheap today, it's definitely not going to stay that way. And besides, it takes a lot of energy to use this water, to pump it, to heat it, to cool it, to treat it, and energy is not cheap. So all of this makes water conservation important, of course. And some of the good practices that are emphasized here regarding water conservation and water sustainability is, first of all, getting to know, being familiar with the water risk of the area where the hotel operates. Different parts of the world are different, so different measures are required in different areas, but you have to first be aware of the water risk in your area. Setting goals for water consumption. You want to set goals for your consumption and for a trend that you want to achieve. For example, Croatia's Valamar Hotel Group has set a goal for water consumption to be maintained at 0.55 cubic meters per occupied room. You also want to monitor water use, which most hotels, almost two-thirds of hotels benchmarked, are in fact doing. You can reduce water, or some good measures, good practices in reducing and minimizing water consumption include installing or actually removing large flush options from toilets, or including installing high efficiency shower heads or high efficiency faucets, which are very popular measures, and I think most hotels are in fact engaging in something like that. You can also educate staff and guests in water conservation. These are your towel reuse programs, linen reuse programs. They are also very, these are low-hanging fruits, as you would call them. These are measures that can be easily taken and that are being implemented quite frequently. But there are other maybe more demanding measures. For example, replacing drinking water, using alternative sources of water, not using drinking water for as extensively as we do today. We can use treated wastewater for watering gardens. We can use seawater for heating and cooling, both of which are something that, for example, the Maestra Hotel Group is trying to do in some of their properties. Or beyond that, especially in high-stressed water areas, some of the measures that I've been reading about is using treated seawater for swimming pools, but also they go as far as, for example, providing guests with water tanks, with small water tanks to catch bathroom basin water. And it may sound silly, but on the other hand, it does make sense. Just think of how much water is wasted while you're brushing your teeth if you leave the tap on. If you have a basin, maybe it'll be caught, or when you're just simply washing your hands. Leaving the tap on is millions of liters of water going down the drain. So even maybe apparently a drastic measure like giving guests a basin to catch this water actually does make sense. Energy conservation. Hotels are among the most energy intensive buildings that exist. I think hospitals are maybe more energy intensive, but hotels are really highly energy intensive buildings. And good practices in energy conservation have to do with minimizing energy use, but also with focusing on renewable sources. So good practices include installing equipment to reduce energy needs. For example, installing efficient appliances, installing LED lighting, motion sensors, smart rooms. Here in Croatia, these are relatively broadly implemented. What is not relatively broadly implemented is, as we can see in these benchmark figures, but is of crucial importance, is actually replacing fossil fuels and shifting to energy from renewable sources. This is still an innovative practice in the hospitality industry. Now, here in Croatia, we have a new legal requirement, the so-called NZEB, or the nearly zero buildings. It's a new requirement for new buildings. And a good example of that is, again, Maestra Hotel Company's newest hotel, their Grand Hotel Park Rovinj, which is an NZEB, a nearly zero energy building. And they've achieved that, among other things, through, for example, they've built energy efficiency into the design of the hotel. So these it has a drawn-in facade, which decreases heating from the sun, from insulation, and also 60% of the hotel's energy needs are met actually through using geothermal energy from the sea that is pumped through, that is used through heat pumps. And finally, all of what I've said so far, so the purchasing practices, the waste management, the water management, most significantly energy use, all of that plays into the hotel's greenhouse gas emissions, and which affect climate change. According to the global hotel decarbonization report, the hotel industry is in order to stay within the 2-degree threshold set by the Paris Agreement, needs to cut carbon emissions by 66% by 2030. We're now at the end almost of 2023, and it needs to cut carbon emissions by 90% by 2050. This is from a 2010 baseline. So in other words, near total decarbonization needs to happen by 2050 to be followed by carbon neutral growth from then on, if we're going to meet the climate accord goals, if we're going to actually deal with climate change in the way that it is being planned. According to the report, also according to this report, this requirement is way above and beyond what most hotel companies are doing today, where they're setting their carbon targets so far. So, which is really alarming. And hotel companies need to pursue more efficient technologies all around in everything they do, from the refrigerator to their power. But actually the central subject is increasing the use of electrical power, which comes from renewable energy sources to replace fossil fuels. And the mantra here is more efficient, more renewable, more electrified. I see I'm almost out of time. I will just run through, we're drawing towards the end of this webinar. I just wanted to, since digitalization is another big topic in this whole project, I just wanted to just briefly mention how digitalization is actually key in driving all these sustainability practices. And there are so many areas from digital document management to using Internet of Things and AI to big data, which are actually digital tools, and they're crucial in promoting, in driving, in helping along, in facilitating sustainability. Let me just show you at this point some best case examples of hotel facilities, new hotel facilities. All of these are new properties, some not even open yet, which in the literature are being considered the stars, the new net zero hotel facilities. One of them is since we are in Croatia, I took the liberty of starting with Croatia. There is our first the Valamar Amikor Green Resort, which is our first hotel resort on the Adriatic, which is built in accordance with sustainability principles, and it's certified as such. It's 100% green energy from renewable sources hotels. It uses natural, recycled, and reused materials. It sources most of its food locally, 3/4, and it's maximally in its operation has reduced the use of paper and plastic. To go a little bit around the world, when we're talking of these best case examples, another one is a new hotel opened last year, Hotel Marcel in New Haven, Connecticut, in the USA. The reason that hotel is considered a good example, a star of sustainability, is not just the fact that it's the first net zero carbon emission hotel in the USA, but also because it's an example of how an old office building can actually be reused. instead of demolishing it, just imagine how high a carbon footprint of demolishing and disposing of all the rubble would be. Instead of doing that, repurposing it or turning it into a hotel. So this is actually the headquarters of an old factory managing tires. And it used to be called the Pirelli building, and it was originally designed by a famous Bauhaus architect, Marcel Breuer. So it's a landmark in addition to being a good example of sustainability. Another example is the Wood Hotel, that's the name of it, the Wood Hotel in Sweden, which is completely built out of wood. It's entirely made of wood. Now, wood it's a very good material because wood stores carbon, and it stores, and the carbon that it's stored during its growth remains stored even after the wood is cut down. So it's a very good building material, and it can actually, this hotel is 20 stories high. It actually shows how much, it's a showcase of how extensively wood can be applied as a building material. And now let me really start bringing this webinar to an end by showing you what to me seems to be a truly breathtakingly beautiful hotel, on top of being expected to be the world's first energy positive hotel. So it's not just reaching the net zero, it's actually producing more energy than it needs. It's producing itself from solar panels. It's producing more energy than it needs, and it's putting it back onto the grid for the local community to use. This is the throught hotel in Norway. It's completely self-sustaining, not just the energy, but the recycling, the renewable infrastructure. Food is sourced locally as well. According to the information that's available, this hotel is to open next year. And to conclude, now I'm really wrapping this up now. All this time, let me just make a point that all this time we have been talking of sustainability in terms of minimizing the impact of hotel and the tourism industry on the environment and the social fabric of communities, most notably in terms of reaching net zero carbon emissions. While in all fairness, the hotel industry still has quite a ways to go to reach the goals that have been set globally by 2050, not to mention the fact of embodied carbon. And at the same time, another concept is already being put forward, and that is the concept of net positive hospitality. So not just reaching net zero, but going beyond net zero and actually making the hospitality industry net positive, making it an agent of regeneration by putting back into the environment and into the social community more than has been taken out. But perhaps this idea of net positive hospitality and regeneration is actually the subject of some other webinar. So
thank you, Neda.
I have extended this a bit, but
no, but we are still within our time frame. I wish to thank you for your interesting presentation, and especially for the great examples that you have given us. I have during your presentation, I have been monitored our chat where colleagues have written some comments and asked a few questions. So I would start with just sharing with you and all the other participants a comment that Mr. David shared with us. Said last year Bali has implemented a ban on single-use plastics, including straw. You were mentioning the new regulatory development here with the single-use plastics.
Yes, that
it's not a question, it's just a comment.
Yeah, just a comment. Yeah. That is actually has become the law here in the EU, and
Yeah, we will all have to abide by with this. The
Of course,
straws
and
are
I think
already out.
it really makes all the sense in the world. You know, when you think of all the cups and the straws and the stirrers, you know, that each one of us would use daily, it really amounts to a lot.
Yeah, definitely. We had one more comment, and I invite all the other participants to share their thoughts and their questions. It's from Luisa. It says, designing a hotel without use of plastic and with waste reduction is a challenge that demands a meticulous approach, requiring organization and careful attention to every detail with a solid methodology. That's amazing. This was the comment regarding the plastic-free hotel you were mentioning.
Yes, it's definitely a challenge. Any of this is definitely a challenge, and it has to do with it. What makes it even more of a challenge, and I think I mentioned that also, but let me re-emphasize, is the fact that you are not limited just to what you're doing within your own organization, where you're the boss, but you also have to take into account what your suppliers are doing, what your people you collaborate with, people you depend on, or organizations you depend on, what they're doing. So it makes this challenge even broader. You really have to be telling others what you expect them to do, what you want them to do. Sometimes you may want to part ways with a supplier if you have other options, of course. So it's definitely very, very challenging.
Yeah, definitely. We had at the beginning of this year been to Norway to see some of their most sustainable hotels, not the new openings that you mentioned. And what was the interesting, all the presentation and all discussions that we had with the colleagues from Norway always started when speaking about sustainability, started with their staff and the way they are trying to educate, put this on the agenda, etc. And with the local community and with their partners, because said, okay, we can kill ourselves here if we don't have the support from our partners. And like you said, from some of them, they had to, stop collaboration, and if they wanted to be more sustainable, be focused towards some other ones. Yeah, we had, Neda, one question from colleague Henrietta. She asked if you know of some tool for tracking food waste in the hotels.
Yes, yeah, there are tools for that, and actually, this is where this digitalization part comes in. There are, for example, these can be more or less sophisticated, but there are cameras that are, for example, cameras that are linked to weights, to scales. So camera that actually photographs what is being thrown away. And then this is linked to, it's connected to a scale which weighs what is being thrown away. And then through analysis, of course, the software comes along with that analyzes all the measurements you've made and all the types of food that are being thrown away, that can very precisely document what the food waste that you're generating. Now, there are some, I've read about, I know of some companies that actually produce these cameras and scales and the software, and that I can forward the link to Henrietta if you want. I can do that. I can send it to you, Bernard, and then maybe you can forward it on or post it. I don't want to advertise here, but it'll surely be a pleasure to forward the links that I have that I know of. But that technology is available. There's a lot can be done with food waste, and no wonder that, and this is one area where hotels are really engaging. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Neda. So we have one question. We have several comments here, but we will go through all of them. But we have a question from David. Says, can you see it, Neda, in the chat box? He said, sustainability in tourism may sound simple, as it comprises nature, the economy, culture, and people. However, it is a complex concept. Do you think that focusing on one of these aspects may make it easier to generate a significant impact?
What do you mean on one of the aspects?
Yeah.
I think that
It's
everything.
a question of focus, if I get
Yeah.
it correctly, because
Yeah.
like colleague wrote, it's a complex concept.
Well, I think the probably the biggest and the most urgent challenge is focusing on energy and focusing on energy sources and doing away with our dependency on fossil fuels. I think I would. This is my opinion. I think it also comes from everything I've read and that I know of this subject. It's the one large issue looming over everything. So weaning ourselves off fossil fuels because of their direct, immediate effect on the climate. And we are witnessing what is happening with the climate. Just yesterday, I don't know if you have noticed, just yesterday a new report on climate change came out, and this July and August were the warmest months on record, and next year it's going to get even worse. It's so this is probably the most immediate thing we can start changing with the largest effect, but everything here is intertwined. Everything is so it does have to be tackled as a system. I think you need to look at sustainability holistically, and you need to be tackling different issues simultaneously. But I would put the largest emphasis on energy.
Thank you, Neda.
And energy sources.
Yeah. So, and we have a few more comments. Colleague Javad wrote, net zero in hospitality is not an easy task to achieve, but new technology will help accelerate transition. Definitely, technology will help us do this, and without certain technology level, all of these things would not even be, some of them would not be possible. And there is a comment.
If I may
Yeah.
add something here, it's something that also comes up in the literature quite often is this issue of, yes, technology can facilitate, and it's incredibly important, but it's really our mindsets that have to change. I think that the key is the people, the managers, having the awareness that this is important, and that your one little hotel makes a difference in the big scheme of things. That mindset has to start changing.
Yeah.
So I would put people first, and then they will implement, the measures and use the technology that's available. We have the technology. We have today the technology to change, to reverse climate change. And this I'm not just talking of the hotel industry here, but the technology exists. It's the willpower. And in that sense, have the political will changing is so incredibly important. But it's not just the political will. Now, the next step is actually the managers, the people owning, the owners, the managers, changing their mindset.
Yeah, and there is this little thing called costs, because to be sustainable, it costs. It's not cheap process to become. If you already have an operating hotel, to come to a certain level, it starts with the mindset, but this is quite expensive sport, I would say.
Yeah.
We don't have alternatives, but although we are all colleagues from the sector, this is probably messages also to our governments, because our businesses keep getting more and more regulation, and we would like to see also some part of additional supports here. Yeah, but we are running out of time. I will just go with a few comments. Colleague Ibala Ruiz says that independent hotel rentals, we cannot separate the rentals from the neighborhood that give us the sources, the plastic supermarket, etc. Of course, it's not. It's one thing to operate, I don't know, in a society which is already, as general, being really sustainable, like in Norway, or for instance in Croatia or in some other country. Well, the general levels of sustainability are different. Okay. Nuno said working with
this is an
suppliers.
incredibly important point.
Yeah.
The point that the colleague was making, that's you are in many ways, very often your hands are tied by the environment around you.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
you can't recycle if there's nowhere to send your recycled items to.
Yeah, definitely. And again, comment about the independent companies. We supply ourselves in local supermarket like everybody else. We do the laundry, buy the welcome package, etc. This is business on the ground floor. We understand. And also a few praise, Neda, from the colleagues about how the presentation has been interesting. But if this is, I think I have gone through all the comments and questions. The colleague said it's agree with that net zero is the most important challenging aspect of sustainability. It's related to regulatory policy as well, what we have before mentioned. Okay, so Neda, we are now 10 minutes past our schedule. On behalf of all of the colleagues, I would like to thank you. And I would like to thank also all the participants for being with us, for having such a fruitful discussion in our chat box, and for all the questions and their comments. So the presentation is recorded. It will be also available on the website of our Tourism 4.0 project. So once more, thanks everybody. Neda, maybe last word from your side.
Well, thank you for all the interest. It's great to see 63 participants and 74 comments. I really hope this has been informative and useful. Please consult the sources I've used that you'll see throughout the slides. You'll get so much more information from there. And if there are any additional questions, please feel free to contact me. My email address is here on the slide. And stay sustainable despite the costs and despite the efforts.
We always think of all of our these effort to raise awareness, to have some good examples as a little piece of the puzzle which will get us there. So also these 50 minutes or 1 hour has been a part of this process. So Neda, thank you for being us. I wish the nice rest of the day to all of our participants, and until our next webinar, I wish a pleasant day to everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.